The disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370. Flight MH370 disappeared on the 8th of March 2014 while flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The aircraft was carrying 12 Malaysian crew members and 227 passengers from 14 different nations. The pilot was 53-year-old Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. Captain Shah was a cadet pilot in 1981 with the airlines, and after training and receiving his commercial pilot's licence, he became a second officer in 1983. Then was promoted to captain of the Boeing 737 airliners in 1991, and then captain of the Airbus A330 in 1996, and finally captain of the Boeing 777 airliners in 1998. He had a total of 18,365 flying hours of experience. The co-pilot was 27-year-old First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, who joined Malaysia Airlines as a cadet pilot in 2007. After becoming a second officer of the Boeing 737, he was promoted to first officer in 2010 and then transitioned to the Airbus A330 in 2012, and in November of 2013 he began his training as the first officer of the Boeing 777 aircraft. Flight MH370 was his final training flight, and he was scheduled to be examined on his next flight. He had accumulated 2,763 hours of flying experience. The passengers of the flight consisted of 153 Chinese citizens. 38 were from Malaysia, 6 from Australia, 2 Canada, 4 France, 5 from India, 7 Indonesia, 2 from Iran, 1 from the Netherlands, 2 from New Zealand, 1 Russia, 1 Taiwan, 2 Ukraine, and finally 3 from the United States. Flight MH370 was an early morning flight. It was one of 2 daily flights from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing operated by Malaysian Airlines. The planned flight duration was 5 hours and 34 minutes, which would consume approximately 82,000 pounds of jet fuel. The aircraft carried 108,200 pounds of fuel. The extra fuel carried was enough to divert the plane to 2 alternate airports should the need arise. Now, at 12:46 a.m, Lumpur radar cleared the flight to fly flight level 35,000 feet. At 1:01 a.m, Captain Shah reported that they had reached the flight level. The flight's final transmission was an automated position report sent at 1:06 a.m. Among the data provided by this message was a total fuel remaining of 96,600 pounds, and the last verbal communication occurred at 1:19 a.m. when Captain Shah acknowledged a transmission from Lumpur radar to Ho Chi Minh. Lumpur radar said, Malaysian 370 contact Ho Chi Minh 12.9, good night. Flight MH370 responded with, good night Malaysian 370. The crew was expected to signal air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh City as the aircraft passed into Vietnamese airspace just north of the point where contact was lost. the captain of another aircraft attempted to contact the crew of Flight 370 shortly after 1:30 a.m. using the International Air Distress Frequency to relay Vietnamese air traffic control's request for the crew to contact them. The captain said he was unable to establish communication but only heard mumbling and static. Calls made to Flight 370's cockpit at 2:39 a.m. and 7:13 a.m. were unanswered but acknowledged by the aircraft's SDU. At 1:20 a.m., Flight 370 was observed on radar at the Kuala Lumpur ACC as it passed the navigational waypoint in the Gulf of Thailand. 5 seconds later, the Mode S symbol disappeared from radar screens. At 1:21 a.m., Flight 370 disappeared from the radar screen at Kuala Lumpur ACC and was lost at about the same time on radar at Ho Chi Minh ACC, which reported that the aircraft was at the nearby waypoint. Air traffic control uses secondary radar, which relies on a signal emitted by a transponder on each aircraft. Therefore, the transponder was no longer functioning on Flight 370 after 1:21 a.m. At the time that the transponder stopped functioning, military radar showed Flight 370 turning right, but then beginning a left turn to a south-westerly direction. At 1:52 a.m, Flight 370 was detected passing just south of the island of Pyongyang. From there, the aircraft flew across the Straits of Malacca. The last known radar detection from a point near the limits of Malaysian military radar was at 2:22 a.m. northwest of Pyongyang Airport. At 2:25 a.m, the aircraft's satellite communication system sent a log-on request message, the first message since the transmission at 1:07 a.m, which was relayed by satellite to a ground station. After logging on to the network, the satellite data unit aboard the aircraft responded to hourly status requests and 2 ground-to-aircraft telephone calls at 2:39 a.m. and at 7:13 a.m, which were both unanswered by the cockpit. The final status request and aircraft acknowledgement occurred at 8:10 a.m, about 1 hour and 40 minutes after the plane was scheduled to arrive in Beijing. The aircraft sent a log-on request at 8:19 a.m, which was followed, after a response from the ground station, by a log-on acknowledgement message at 8:19 a.m. The log-on acknowledgement message is the last piece of data available from Flight 370. A search and rescue effort was launched in Southeast Asia soon after the disappearance of Flight 370, and following the initial analysis of communication between the aircraft and a satellite, the surface search was then focused to the southern Indian Ocean 1 week after the aircraft's disappearance. Between the 18th of March and the 28th of April, 19 vessels and 345 sorties by military aircraft searched over 1,800,000 square miles. The final phase of the search was a sonar search of the seafloor southwest of Perth, Western Australia. By the time of October 2017 had come around, 20 pieces of debris believed to be from MH370 have been recovered from beaches in the Western Indian Ocean. 18 of the items were identified as being very likely or almost certain to be from MH370, while the other 2 were assessed as probably from the accident. There are many theories as to what people believe happened to flight MH370. A number of theories suggest that the disappearance may have been the result of a fire in the cockpit, cargo compartment, landing gear, or another part of the plane. A theory considered by the Malaysian government and the Australian Transport Safety Bureau is that the passengers and crew of MH370 were incapacitated by an oxygen deficiency. They speculated that everyone on the plane, including its captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, somehow fell unconscious. The plane would have been on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and then crashed into the sea. Versions of this theory include a hijacking in which someone damaged the oxygen supply, or an accident that harmed the plane's mechanics and affected its oxygen levels. Christopher Goodfellow, a former pilot, has speculated that an electrical fire on the plane led the pilots to turn it back towards Malaysia to find an emergency landing strip. He said the plane would have flown on autopilot as the fire incapacitated the crew and passengers. But another pilot, Patrick Smith, said it would have been unlikely that the plane would travel for hours on autopilot after a fire. Other evidence against that theory is that the plane also turned again after heading towards Malaysia. Patrick Smith said in 2015 that the nature of the debris found also might suggest the plane was under control when it crashed. The plane might have landed gently in the water and sunk in mostly one piece. Experts have said this theory is consistent with the debris found. Another leading theory is that a cyber attack may have been carried out on Flight 370 based on statements made by the former scientific advisor to the UK government, who proposed that hackers may have changed the plane's speed, direction and altitude using radio signals to the plane's flight management system. Whether existing security on commercial flights is sufficient to prevent such an attack is also a matter of debate, although Boeing has dismissed the possibility. A spokesperson for the company, Gayla Keller, said that they were confident in the robust protection of all flight critical systems and inability for a hacker to gain access to either external or internal means on the 777 and all Boeing aeroplanes. While supporters of this theory have cited Hugo Tesso's app, which hacked into the pilot system software, with Tesso presented at a conference in April 2013. The Federal Aviation Administration and other major government bodies dismissed the significance of the app. They stated that the software on an actual plane would be different from the software on which Tesso had tested this app. The leading theory, however, is that Captain Shah himself was responsible. A friend of the captain, a fellow Boeing 777 pilot, said he believes Captain Zahiri Ahmad Shah is guilty of an atrocity, and it's a necessary conclusion to one of the world's greatest aviation mysteries. The theory goes that Captain Shah deliberately took the plane off course on a carefully planned murder-suicide mission, and that the data analysis indicates that the Boeing 777 flew over the Indian Ocean until it ran out of fuel and violently slammed into the water with all 239 people on board. They say there is a suspicion that Shah, who flew a similar flight path on his flight simulator at home, was clinically depressed. It is suspected the plane's passenger cabin was deliberately depressurised by Shah to kill everyone on board hours before the crash. Before doing so, he would have put on an oxygen mask in the cockpit so he could continue to fly the aircraft for hours. At around the same time, it's said the cabin was depressurised, the electrical system was deliberately turned off, making the plane impossible to track by satellite. An FBI inspector of Shah's Microsoft Flight Simulator at home showed he had tested a flight roughly matching the path of MH370, ending in the Indian Ocean after running out of fuel. His voice was heard in the final radio communication less than 2 minutes before the plane began to divert from its final path from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. One of his lifelong friends said that he had reluctantly come to the conclusion that Shah deliberately crashed the plane, given the evidence amassed by independent investigators. The friend, who didn't want to be named, said, "It's hard to reconcile with the man I knew, but it's a necessary conclusion." The friend stated that Shah likely tricked his inexperienced 27-year-old co-pilot Farik Hamid, who was on his final training flight, into leaving the cockpit and locked him out. He said, "Zahari was an examiner. All he had to say was, 'Go check something in the cabin,' and the guy would have gone." Shah's friend doesn't know why the pilot would do such a thing, but thought it might be down to the captain's emotional state. He said, "Zahari's marriage was bad. In the past he slept with some of the flight attendants, and so what? We all do. You're flying over the world with these beautiful girls in the back," but his wife knew. Other friends and co-workers of the captain came forward and said that the captain was lonely and sad. There is now a suspicion that he was clinically depressed. It is said he was having an affair with a mum of 3. His wife had moved out and was living in the second home, and he had told friends he had spent the night a lot of time pacing empty rooms on his days off while waiting for his next flight. He was obsessed with young models on social media, even writing sexual comments to one and getting no reply. There had been plenty of conspiracy theories, but a group of independent investigators concluded last year that Shah had deliberately crashed the jet. They disagreed over whether he was still alive when the plane crashed into the sea and disintegrated. Captain Shah's family have vehemently denied he was responsible and declared he was being used as a scapegoat. Captain Shah's brother-in-law has refuted multiple allegations levelled against the captain regarding his personal life and his professional activities. He also denied that the captain could have been a rogue pilot on a suicide mission and claimed the authorities may be using Captain Shah as their scapegoat. He said, "Put it this way, this is a promise. If they blame him, I'll fight. I just won't sit down and keep quiet. Because if you say that he wanted to commit suicide in the Indian Ocean, I say, prove it. If he wanted to commit suicide, he wouldn't. He would want to kill 238 people with him. Why? Why would he be so stupid? He is not. He was not suicidal. We enjoy our life in the fullest because life only happens once." He also claims the captain committing suicide for life insurance were untrue. He stated, "If you're talking about life insurance, he didn't have one. Trust me. Check. He didn't have one. He didn't believe in it, so why would he want to commit suicide? Why would a person in their right mind want to suicide? He had a good life. He had a lot of money, and he loved his daughter very much." Mr. Khan said his sister found out that her husband's plane was missing only after watching the news. Malaysian Airlines failed to ring her to break the news. He stated, "She told me that she saw the news saying that the Malaysian Airlines flight to Beijing went missing. At first she said, 'Wow, missing.' She didn't know whose flight that was," he said. "And then, suddenly, she checked the roster. Then she knew that her husband had went missing." More outlandish theories include a remote cyber hijacking, the plane being shot down by perhaps the US military, the idea that Russian President Vladimir Putin knows the plane's location, a mystery extra passenger taking control of the plane, a Bermuda Triangle-style area causing the plane's disappearance, and North Korea taking the plane. Other theories blame the CIA, Israel, and aliens. But all in all, there is no definitive answer, and at the end of the day, it's easy to put the blame all on a man who cannot defend himself.